Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
Use Lightroom Classic CC to adjust the overall tonal scale of an image. To do this, use the controls found within the Tone section of the Basic panel. Keep in mind that the tone controls you see in the Basic panel will vary depending on which process version you're working with. You can switch process versions by choosing Settings, Process from the menu bar, and then selecting a different process version from the available options. This lesson will focus on the tone controls displayed in the current process version, also known as PV4. To adjust the tonal scale of an image, display the photo in the Develop module and then expand the Basic panel. In the Tone section of the panel, you'll see several sliders as well as an Auto button. You can click the Auto button to automatically set the tonal scale for the image. When you use the Auto button, Lightroom Classic CC adjusts the sliders to maximize the tonal scale while minimizing highlight and shadow clipping. You can use the auto adjustment by itself, or you can fine-tune the sliders after applying the auto settings. The tone sliders in the Basic panel let you control the tonal scale of an image in specific ways. You can manually adjust the values by moving the slider. You can click and drag to move the slider, or use the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard. You can also click to select a slider's value, and then type in a replacement value. Then press the Enter key on your keyboard. This method can be helpful when you want to achieve a specific tonal value. Keep in mind that you can reset any slider to its default value by double-clicking the slider's name within the panel. The Exposure slider controls the overall image brightness. Exposure values are set to increments that are equal to f-stop values on your camera. For example, an adjustment of +2 is very similar to opening the aperture 2 stops, and an adjustment of -2 is very similar to closing the aperture 2 stops. The Contrast slider controls image contrast in a photo. This slider mainly affects midtones in an image. If you move the slider into higher values, the middle to dark areas of the photo become darker, and the middle to light areas become brighter. If you move the slider into lower values, the inverse effect takes place and contrast is reduced. The Highlight slider adjusts bright areas within the image. If you move this slider into higher values, highlights are brightened and clipping is minimized. If you move the slider into lower values, highlights are darkened and blown out highlight details are recovered. The Shadows slider adjusts dark areas within an image. If you move this slider into higher values, shadows are brightened and shadow details are recovered. If you move the slider into lower values, shadows are darkened and clipping is minimized. The White slider adjusts white clipping. If you move this slider into higher values, highlight clipping is increased. This type of adjustment can produce specular highlights. If you move the slider into lower values, clipping in highlights is reduced. The Black slider adjusts black clipping. If you move the slider into higher values, shadow clipping is reduced. If you move the slider into lower values, black clipping increases and more shadows are mapped to pure black. If you are using Process version 2010 or Process version 2003, different sliders are available. The Blacks slider in PV 2010 and PV 2003 specifies which image values map to black. If you move the slider into higher values, more areas of the photo become black. This slider affects mostly shadows. The Recovery slider in PV 2010 and PV 2003 attempts to recover highlight details that are lost because of camera overexposure. The Fill Light slider in PV 2010 and PV 2003 reveals more details by lightening shadows while maintaining black values. If you use this slider, beware of image noise that can appear when high values are applied. The Brightness slider in PV 2010 and PV 2003 adjusts overall image brightness. This slider mainly affects midtones in an image.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.